All right. So, Richa, over to you now. You can unmute yourself and share your screen.
Is my screen visible now?
Yes, Richa.
Okay, okay. All right. So I think the best thing about this conversation, although I'm waiting what Dr. Malpani is going to talk about it, but the positive thing is that I can see a bunch of books behind him. So I am going to take a lead from there. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Richa, co-founder of GetLit. In next few slides, I'm going to share with you the reason behind the existence of GetLit and what we are trying to achieve. And our journey in the space of children's literature, reading and expression wasn't a planned one. Uh, since my childhood, I've been in love with books, and I think my current worldview and how I handle life has, greatly been influenced by the books that I've read.
Okay, Richa, again, you're talking about yourself. I'm not even sure I'm interested in listening to anything about Richa. You need to earn the right for me to find out a little bit more about you. And you're right, I have a soft corner for books, but that doesn't mean that you can assume certain things. So at some point, I'm still thinking, yeah, ये तो होने ही वाला है. But Richa को क्यों पैसे do in order to make that happen? That's the important question you need to answer. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. Fair enough. So I'm trying to kind of build in the journey why we are doing what we are doing here. And I saw a connect, and I think I wanted to use that connect in my, presentation. So the basic premise of GetLit is built on the fact that every child has the right to access stories, and GetLit is trying to create that largest space for children to discover and also to be able to feel confident to share their own worldview with everyone out there. Now, for us, the journey kind of, has been. I'm going to move to my next slide. Give me 1 second. Yeah. Yeah, so we've been working in this space based on that trigger. And I think as a parent, what I found is when we started off our journey, we realized that there were a lot of middle class parents like me who know that, I need to kind of really expose my children to literature and reading and writing. But what we really found is that in India, we haven't been able to create a huge distribution network. So me as a parent of a young I'm motivated that I want to really provide, wide range of literature. So I will ask my friends, I will go and ask the librarian, I will go and Google it up on Amazon, Flipkart, I'll buy it and I'll bring it in and I'll, kind of give it to my child. And then I will tell my child, okay, why are you not reading? You're an 8-year-old. Why are you reading a picture book, which is meant for 4-year-old or a 5-year-old? And then a parent realizes that my child actually might be lacking in terms of the required reading skills. But as a parent, I don't want to really acknowledge that. So I'm going to say, okay, this is not how you're supposed to do. I'm going to help you out doing that. Now, the first two problem statement is something which has been felt by most of the parents that, okay, I'm going to do it once. I'm going to go and get the content out there. I'm going to get the book. I'm going to buy it and I'm going to give it to my child. And my child doesn't want to even look at those books. Now, the entire sequence has two core issues in these two steps. One is I have to put a lot of effort as a parent to go and keep on looking for those books. I have to buy it. That's not a problem. But the second is also that I need credible experts where I'm able to really easily access the required reading and writing skills for my children. First two problems can be kind of countered by your digital and platform and kind of creating that kind of access points. But the third biggest problem which a parent faces or an educator faces is how do I continuously keep my child motivated? Because I'm going to put in effort, I'm going to make the child read, I'm going to sit with them, but my energy as a parent is also going to get consumed by a lot of other things. And similar is going to happen with my child also. He'll say, okay, I've got other things to do. I've got my friends who are reading Wimpy Kids. Why do you want me to read something else? And then I want to get, I'm interested more in Fortnite and Minecraft. I would rather spend my energies out there. But as a parent, I know that these are two critical skills. My child's entire learning journey is going to be dependent on your basic R's, reading and writing. So, but slowly, because I find that there's so much of effort that is going to be involved, I slowly move out of, kind of doing this continuously. So the three problem statements that we really kind of validated and, kind of came across were, there are issues on the distribution side, inability to access the skills, the right skills from the experts, and the biggest challenge of keeping my child motivated on those, on that journey. So
I'm going to say something, Richa. I think a lot of these, I'm happy to concede some of these points. And always remember, the more you talk, the less the time you're giving me to ask you questions. And the
Okay.
whole purpose of the pitch is to get me engaged and get me to ask questions.
Okay.
Except on Shark Tank, which is of course a TV show, no one actually signs a check at the end of a pitch. The reason an investor listens to a pitch is to find reasons to say no. Now, I know that sounds very paradoxical, but the reality is we're overloaded with stuff, and the more people we can say no to, the easier it is for us to focus on the few guys we want to say yes to. So I know it sounds perverse and paradoxical, but that's the reality. And of course, from your perspective, I know that ultimately at the end of the day you want to check, but effectively all you're going to get is permission to give me more details. And therefore your focus needs to be, this is a much better slide as compared to the first one, because it's got images, it's got pictures. You actually have such a great story to tell, because all of us lots of us have kids, but all of us have been kids at some point.
Yeah.
All of us understand the importance of, readers being leaders, all that good stuff. And then when you start off with a distracted kid, then you start off with an upset mother, and then you talk about some of this thing. I think it flows a lot easier. So this makes a lot of sense that, why are kids so distracted? Why are things going to get worse? And this is what we're doing to solve it. But go ahead.
Yeah. So what we realized is that the critical factor where we want to really engage with children is going to be revolving around children. What are the triggers? What are their drivers? So once we looked at them, we realized that the current Gen Z generation, they want to have choice. They want to choose what they're going to consume, how they're going to consume, and they want to do it with their friends. They don't want to do it in isolation. So their friends are playing a huge role in terms of the decisions that our children are making. The third biggest driver for this generation is that they have a huge desire to kind of really showcase their unique talent out there, the unique parts of their personality. In fact, 73% of the children in the age group of 17 to 13 are on platforms which are meant for adults, like YouTube and TikTok, consuming and creating content out there. So they want to really kind of showcase, express themselves out there. And the fourth biggest, I think, kind of a trigger for them is they want to have fun. For them, nothing matters in terms of what my parent and what my teacher wants me to learn.
Teacher, everything you said applies to me. And I'm definitely not a Gen Z. I want choice. I like hanging out with friends. I like to express myself. I like rewards and this thing else. So my limited point is none of this is unique to kids. That's all I'm saying.
Actually, I think it is, maybe it might have certain common factors amongst adults, but I think this is something which we have ignored. If this is so universal, as adults, we've ignored it, that these are your triggers, that children are looking at challenges, they want to show off, they want to flex. And these are your critical factors, which we have actually overlooked as adults.
All right.
So,
I don't think, I agree, humans have evolved over the last 100,000 years, but we've always been social animals. I don't think any of that is going to change. And a lot of that is only you're using slightly different platforms. So in one sense, you're enabling some of that to happen. I would doing again, I don't want to be prescriptive about some of these things, but I think your first question is, why don't kids want to read anymore? And that's something which would resonate. So is that something which a lot of people, was the investor likely to agree with that statement? The thing is, you want to get the investor to start nodding his head and saying, yes, what she's saying makes sense. My kids don't read anymore. My grandchildren don't read anymore, whatever else it may be. And the moment you've started that happening, then you've got a window into his brain and his heart, and he's then much more likely to listen to what you're saying. But all these points I've conceded already, and you're halfway through your pitch, but you still haven't got to what you're going to do to solve it. So I'm a little worried about that. But go ahead.
So here I come with, so I think that was the core, drivers which are now part of the GetLit platform, where we realize that I cannot anymore give a child a book and assume that the child is going to get attracted and enticed towards reading it. So it has to be a community-driven approach where on one side, the child has full access to consume and pick up the books that they wish to read from that library. No more are the parents kind of peeping down their head and saying, you are a 10-year-old and you can't read a book which is meant for maybe a picture book and meant for a younger audience. They get to discover and they get to choose. They have the possibility and the tools to be able to create and share their own content and showcase their personality out there on that space. They also have access to multiple, programs. Now, geographies are no more a boundary. So programs like your Reading Olympiad, programs on writing, publishing their content on blogs coming from multiple knowledge-based organizations becomes accessible on GetLit. They also have the possibility to now learn from the experts. So we've got masterclasses with authors, journalists, illustrators, and also from in-house GetLit experts who kind of allow them to really learn these skills. And all of this gets tied up together through deep game mechanics, because at the end of the day, a child wants to have fun. They need to kind of see that,
Isn't it true that the moment, I understand gamification is a buzzword, but the moment you start giving people rewards and medals, then you're effectively converting the intrinsic motivation to extrinsic motivation?
No, actually,
for a short amount of time.
So you start off with extrinsic motivation by giving them awards. So you tell them that, okay, you come daily, you earn a point. You read even a page, you will earn a point. You write reviews, you earn trophies. You do book days, you earn kind of badges. But eventually the content becomes the hook. The fact that I'm writing reviews and somebody's appreciating that I've written reviews kind of takes over. So you start off with extrinsic and then you move towards intrinsic. And then that's the cycle that you really kind of trying to build. No more are they going to be really worried about where am I on the leaderboard, but it will be more about that, okay, can I write better content? Can I kind of create better book days and challenge my friends? So they take over the content creation and engagement on their own, because now we are providing them with those tools.
So tell me how they publish the content, because all the rest of the stuff, I guess, is reasonably easy to follow.
Yeah, so we give them writing prompts. So we give them a lot of prompts to kind of begin with, and they can put their content out there. The prompts.
Yeah. So, I can understand, discover, consume, okay, fine. You'll have a little Amazon for kids, which is appropriate, and all that stuff is easy for me to figure out.
Yeah.
I want to know what your magic sauce is. So some of it I'm granting you. Okay, all that is intuitive, makes sense, been there, done that.
Sure. So in fact, for example, if you look at this slide, so this is your tell your story. So we have created a prompt for them, and they get to publish their content below that. So they get to write on those. So if I give them a task on limericks, so limericks is a 3-step process, and then they get to write limericks below that. So the next week, the prompt comes to them on writing. So you get a prompt on that these are 5 words, and these are random 5 words. You get to write your story, and then they get to see, okay, what my friends have written. So that's how you slowly kind of, expose them to different mini challenges and also prompts to kind of really get into that groove of writing.
Okay, go ahead.
So these were the basic premises and the features that we began with, and these are the kind of traction or the validation that we received. So based on the current 10,000 registered kids on the platform and who are consuming, content from 25 plus publishers, in December, we completed around 1 million book page, reads by children on the platform. Now, there's another important element called book days. This was out of the insight that, anybody who loves a book like a Harry Potter or Percy Jackson, you like to share a lot of trivia, book trivia. So we converted those book trivia into book days. And if you, successfully answer those book trivias, you earn a trophy. And this was surprising for us because we realized that children have attempted around, close to 50,000 book days, successfully 13,500 book days. And that's something which they love to do.
Okay.
Yeah, so again, they've written a lot of book reviews. Our entire premise on GetLit is around content. And we have not spent a single penny kind of getting users on the platform, but by virtue of the content that we have published, we have been able to get around 45,000, organic users on a monthly basis with a 2 million impressions. And
I'll tell you one thing, Richa. For me, all these are vanity metrics.
Okay.
Just letting you know. I mean, I understand, as long as you're not producing, but then to actually translate that into something monetizable is a completely different. The moment you start charging for this, all these numbers will become 0.01% of whatever they are. Just a warning. But go ahead.
No, absolutely right. And I think that's what I will show you in next few slides. What have we achieved till now? I think we've been able to create a huge content bank with some of the leading children's publishers.
So, Richa, you've got like just a minute or two more. Whatever is like the main thing you want to focus on, why don't you wait?
So I think we've been able to validate a lot of our, I will take to one of the most critical slides. This is the value progression of a child on GetLit. So what we have validated is at the bottom of this entire funnel, where were we able to monetize it? Because if I give good content for free, there were multiple takers for it. For us, the biggest was that the parents are going to pay me for it. And I think that's what we have been able to achieve at the bottom of the funnel. The first part of the funnel is where children get to access the entire gamut, the universe of literature, books, reviews being written by children, classics. Also creating a lot of engagement through the tools which we are giving them on the platform. Again, through book days, which they can invite their friends, and the partner contest. But once they kind of get familiarized and they know that GetLit is something which they love being on, then they kind of get to or get onboarded on our value-added products where they get to pay us. So programs like Reading Olympiad, which is just unique to us, moving towards subscription.
Coming back, when it's unique to you, it's very easy for someone to reverse engineer or copy or duplicate. That's really not a competitive mode, something you need to remember. And I think, in principle, I think this is absolutely great. And I think this is great for someone who is doing it. But for someone who expects to be able to monetize it, I think I'm going to find it exceptionally hard. This is what my guess is. So I love everything you're doing. I have a soft corner for this kind of stuff. But having said that, when I'm putting my investor hat on, it's got to be a much hard-headed hat. It's got to be, so, this is the kind of stuff I'd say, great, happy to give a grant. Let's see how well you can grow it. But would I invest in a business like this? I'd be a lot more skeptical about your ability to create something which is unique, which people will be willing to pay for. That's what my worry is. How do you address that?
Yeah. So I think people have paid for it. So we have parents who are part of our live sessions, who are participating. So in our second edition of the Reading Olympiad, we have children. Despite COVID, we have around children, coming in from 70 top schools from the country, and that's based on the limited kind of.
I wouldn't say despite COVID. I would say because of COVID. Yeah.
Not really. I would say with the kind of consumption that has increased on digital platform for parents, they have become more attuned and open to it. But now they need to balance it. So for me, right now, I'm waiting for schools to reopen, because then they will have physical schools, and now they are open to kind of consuming, accessing, programs on digital platforms. That's where my entire growth is going to kind of pick up, because now I don't have to. Pre-COVID, I had to tell them that, okay, children need to be reading, they should their positive digital time, but now their entire time is digital. So now I need to really scratch through that digital time. And once the schools reopen, I just have a more open, audience to kind of cater to. And this is a segment which I think the K-12 has technically missed out on. This is something. The mode that you were talking about this is the mode for me. When a child is publishing content on my platform, building a portfolio of content, creating book days, sharing it with their friends, showing the kind of achievement that they have done on the Olympiad and the contest, children become my mode. They don't want to move out and leave all that great, portfolio that they've created on GetLit. And that's what we are trying to do.
The trouble, of course, is it's a closed portfolio, which means it restricts anyone who wants to examine that portfolio, look at it, will then have to get to the GetLit platform. My logic thing is, then why would you want to do that when you can share it digitally with the rest of the world? So, create your own blog, create your own website. You can do it whether you're 8 years old or 10 years old.
Yeah.
So in one sense, my concern is you're actually locking people into a particular ecosystem for your reasons, which may not necessarily be in the child's best interest. I think it's great that you're getting them to actually do that. I'm just looking at the big picture right now.
Yeah. I think that's the reason why we have a free part of it, where you don't have to pay and kind of then you just need to be on the platform. So for a child, it's not just about publishing, but it's also about whether I'm getting the audience to read my content.
Yes.
So here, their entire friend or the peer group is present. So and also maybe additional discovery being provided to that same content. So instead of me trying to create a blog where I have to continuously get an audience.
What's your one-line elevator speech, Vijay?
So it's a platform for children to discover and create stories.
Okay. I like the fact that you've included stories, so that I give you full marks for. Effectively, you've also got to say, in one sense, I'm presuming that you're solving a problem for the parents because they're the decision makers. So that should also be a part of your, pitch. You're effectively helping people, you're helping children to enjoy learning how to read, making it more fun for them. And you want, obviously, parents understand the importance of that. And that's what you're doing. So that's something you might want to refine. And you might want to keep on emphasizing how you're doing that. Is there another slide now?
Yeah,
when you have subscription-based and stuff, you got $1,500 in one day. You got $1,500 in a year's time. And I'm very allergic when people start using dollars when they're pitching to Indian investors. That's just one of my pet peeves. But that's okay. Go ahead. Huh? Go on.
The last one I saw in Indian rupees, and they said, "What's it in dollars?" So
So again, the least you can do is then, do a little bit homework about whom you're pitching to. And if, then, if they want dollars, give it to them. But I'm just saying my pet peeve.
No. Yeah, so I have actually many more slides, but yeah, how do we get them? It's both online, offline, and strategic partnerships with the brands. So online is full of.
Go on. So, a lot of this stuff, I will grant you if you know what I'm saying. You don't necessarily need to drill down into each individual slide. I understand it's hard on a Zoom call, but typically when you're giving a presentation, you can see, is this investor getting bored? Does he already know all this? Because I can read much faster than you can talk. Or do his eyes light up when he says, okay, what is he saying? So that's really the trick. Honestly, the whole point of your 10 slides is find that one slide which piques his curiosity. And you can't predict in advance what that slide's going to be. It's going to be different for me, it's going to be different for someone else. And then get him hooked onto that. And then it's perfectly okay if you don't even discuss the remaining 8 slides. Because effectively you're asked, and I think this is something I need to keep on emphasizing. Your only reasonable ask at the end of a pitch is, I want to find out more about you, Richa. That's it. You're not going to be able to do anything else. So once you've got that, then stop. And then say, I think that's a great question. Happy to share you more information. Please share your mobile/email or tell me how you want me to send you more details. And then leave it at that. Leave him wanting to ask you more and wanting to find out more. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think that's the second meeting is what I'm aiming for.
Perfect. Great.
So does she get a second meeting, sir?
Well, I think some of this will be stuff. So like I said, my problem is I have a soft corner for this space. But other problem is because I have a soft corner for this space, I think it needs to be free, which has its own sets of problems. I think a lot of reading and education and learning should be free, which doesn't fit in with someone who necessarily wants to monetize it. So perhaps I'm not the right investor for her. Sounds a little bit ironic. I completely get that. But, all of us come with certain degree of emotional baggage. None of that is going to be changed. I'm very open about the emotional baggage I carry. That, hey, this is my worldview, this is where I'm coming from. If you can monetize it, more power to you. But philosophically, I disagree with the fact that this should be monetized. Again, my personal belief. Lots of people have proven me wrong multiple times, so that doesn't mean much, Richa.
No, so Dr. Malpani, I will not will try to convert you because I think everybody has the right to that opinion. The reason when we started off with this and the reason we did not make it an NGO is because we wanted it to be a sustainable business model. And I'll tell you why it has to be a sustainable business model. Because if you look at the kind of, the publishers that we have on the platform, these are small independent publishers and they are putting their sweat and money out there, putting out great content. And I think there is a market for it which has not been tapped yet. So for us, that entire business model has to happen because
I agree with you. I'm not disputing anything. I agree everything needs to be sustainable, scalable. I'm not a philanthropist. I don't believe in charity. But I think there are different ways of getting the money, and for some things, maybe investor money is not the right way. The trouble with investors is at some point they want a return. And this is not the kind of model. It's far better to get your customers to pay and then to continue to grow. That's my personal belief. This is a great model. If your customers see enough value, and if you don't have an investor breathing down your neck asking for an exit, you can happily do this. You obviously love it, you enjoy it, you're good at it. You would do it even if no one gave you any money. And there are enough Richas in this world who will pay you for it because you're an expert in your space. So I would say, more power to you, but I'm not necessarily sure whether an investor will add value to your life. But that's just my 2 cents.
Oh, absolutely. I think those are great words for me to kind of keep going.
Thank you so much, Richa. More power to you. I would just like to add on behalf of Richa that she does have a corporate sponsorship kind of a monetization model also, where the child is not paying, but corporates like say if Nestle wants to promote Maggie, so that kind of a model.
Let me tell you, that's a very, very hard model because typically that particular CSR manager for that particular year will say, no, I love Richa and what she's doing.
This is not CSR, this is branding.
Yeah, but the trouble is these guys are very fickle, if you know what I'm saying. Next साल के बाद वो promote हो जाता है, दूसरी जगह जाता है, then you have to do your sell all over again. I'm not knocking it. I'm saying I think it's important to have these multiple channels. You should explore anything and everything. You never know what's going to work. And in fact, if it works for Nestle, then you can get HLL or someone else to do the same thing. It's just that those are hard channels because you're still dependent on the mercy of someone else. And my point is never depend on the mercy of an investor or a corporate body or anyone else. You should be self-sufficient so that everything else is additional gravy.
Yeah, that's the irony that people who don't need money are the ones who are easiest to fund.
But that's so true. I think the first thing you need to learn in life is to accept reality for whatever it is and then take off from there. Rather than engage in wishful, fanciful thinking. Because the trouble with wishful thinking is then you start feeling sorry for yourself and you start complaining about how unfair the world is. And that's not really helping anyone at all.